talk radio, music, and podcasts from the Korean Peninsula. KoreaFM.net. Yana Lekarska is a freelance journalist and filmmaker based in Seoul, and her interest in Korean film and cinema history brings her to film festivals across the ROK. During the recent 17th Jeonju International Film Festival, she spoke with Korean-American director Andrew An, who came to his parents' home country for the first time after more than 20 years to present his feature film debut, Spa Night, which was included in the World Cinemascape section of the festival. Shot in L.A. but with almost 70% Korean language dialogue, it is the story of a young Korean-American boy named David who tries to cope with his parents' expectations towards his future and his own struggle with his sexuality. David's parents are forced to close the restaurant they have been running for years, and led by his desire to help them financially, he gets a part-time job at a jjimjilbang in LA's Koreatown. David soon finds out that the business is not only used as a traditional sauna, but also a place for gay men from different countries to meet and have sex. After working there, David realizes his own homosexuality, but with his parents fixated on his future and success, he finds himself at a dead end. The film's world premiere was at Sundance earlier this year, and Yana Lekarska began the interview by asking Spa Night director Andrew An how different audiences have reacted to his film.
So, Andrew, this is the first time that Korean audience saw your film, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a premiere in Korea,
Yes.
in Jeonju.
Yeah.
How does it feel?
It's really special in a lot of ways because, the film is so much about the sacrifices that Korean immigrants make, in order to have families in a different country. And David, the main character, he feels that expectation of wanting to make that sacrifice worth it for his parents. And so to be in Korea and to see the country that my parents sacrificed, to have me in America is really emotional. And while I've been here, I've kind of seen it from the other side of the story, which is that it wasn't just my parents that sacrificed something, it was also their families in Korea who had sacrificed losing, their sons and daughters, their brothers and sisters to a different country. And so for me, showing the film here is a little bit like me telling that family, the Korean audiences that, we're working really hard to make their sacrifices worth it too,
Was the reaction here different to the other screenings?
I think there's a lot of, there's more questions here in Jeonju as opposed to festivals in the States. There are more questions here about kind of the immigrant experience, whereas in the U.S., I think the questions are much more about kind of the individual and growing and trying to reconcile these two different identities. So in some ways, the Korean audiences, it feels a little bit more grand. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a bigger scale film, which is exciting for me.
Because basically the film has kind of two storylines. Mm-hmm. One is his family sacrifice and the life that they have built up in the States, and on the other hand we have David who is trying to find himself.
Right.
And in this concrete situation it's about finding his sexuality.
Right.
So maybe in Korea you think that it's more about his family, like the life, and in the States it's more about him like finding himself?
A little bit. I mean, I think that's kind of the general feeling that I get. Although, I think for different audience members, I think, when I was at Sundance, all the gay press that I talked to, they were so interested in all the cruising and the hooking up and kind of the sexuality elements of the film. So, even here in Korea, it's like having talked to a few of the queer Korean people who came to see the first screening, it was really exciting, that they were really interested about the sexuality element as well. So, I think in general that's very true, that I think the Korean audiences are really hooked to the family story. But, I think it depends person to person.
How much is the film related to your personal story?
There's a lot. I think it's almost like a different version of my life, because a lot of the same fears and anxieties that David goes through in the film are the fears and anxieties that I had growing up. But, a lot of the details are different, so I'm not an only child, I went to, college, so these elements are different, and it's kind of done that way for the sake of, drama and kind of upping the stakes, but I think emotionally it's very personal.
And how did you come with the idea about this spa?
So the spa, it happened when I was out to drinks with some friends, some gay friends, and one of my friends told me that he had a hot hookup with a guy in a steam room at a Korean spa in LA. And when I heard it, it was really shocking to me because the spa is such a family space, it's very cultural. So then to hear that it was also being used for, hooking up in the gay community, like it kind of freaked me out, but it was also like kind of sexy. And I think that was why I really wanted to make a film about it, because it felt like a really perfect kind of meeting point of my gay and my Korean identities. It's like they met in this location, and so I just got really obsessed with wanting to tell the story about a young Korean American man trying to kind of find himself in the spa, in the Korean spa.
Yeah, because it is such a traditional Korean place. Like the Jeonju is one of the most iconic symbols of Korean culture, and at the same time, him being so different.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating kind of what's the word? Consequence of like having in Los Angeles like a very big Korean community, but then also a very big gay community, and I thought like maybe it was just my friend, like it's just a one-off thing, but it's actually very prevalent at some spas in LA. Like it's something that happens a lot. And I think it's a weird phenomenon, but I think for David in the film, it's kind of the way that it like shocks him to kind of start to realize his own sexuality.
This is the first time that you're here in Korea in 20 years, I think.
Yeah, 22 years. Yeah.
How old are you now?
I'm 30, so I came here when I was 8. So it's totally different, like the food I remember and like the landscape that I remember, it's totally different. And then also for me, it's just like my Korean. Actually, I think when I was 8 years old, my Korean was better than my Korean now, because I was speaking a lot more Korean when I was a kid. So to me, it's like a totally new experience. It's almost as if I've never been here before.
So back home in the States, because that's where your home is, you don't speak Korean that much? I
don't. I speak Korean with my family, with my parents, but it's pretty limited to like,
everyday stuff.
Yeah, it's like, 언제 먹어? Like, 빨리 가자. It's like things like that, things that I say to my parents. But as I've been here, it's been really fascinating, like what Korean slowly comes back to me, and I do have an advantage over some of the other filmmakers who are here who don't speak any Korean and can't read it. At least I can read it, and even if it's slowly, like I know, okay, that's like I can get like that's tteokbokki, and I know what that is. You know, it's like, oh, bulgogi, I know what that is. You know, so it's been really fun.
So the whole Korean community in LA. So you basically speak in English among yourselves.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my Korean American friends, and you see that in SpaNet as well with the entire USC sequence. It's like, you know, a lot of Korean Americans, second generation Korean Americans, they speak English to each other, and they might drop a few words here and there where they're like "kombe," you know, like anything like that, like, but. You know, it depends. I think some Korean Americans, they speak a lot more. You know, we have a lot of like 1.5 generation where, you know, people grew up as kids here in Korea and then like moved to LA when they were 12 or 13. You know, and that's what I find really fascinating about SpaNet too, is that you see some shades of that. Like there's the academy director, the Hagwon director, and he speaks English and Korean pretty fluently. So it's really fun for me to be able to show kind of the different levels of generation in the film.
And how did you do the casting? Because you mentioned during the Q&A session that it wasn't easy.
The casting was really tricky. I mean, you know, there are different obstacles. So one obstacle was just finding Korean American actors, you know, which is complicated. I mean, there's a lot of Korean people in LA. You'd think that there'd be more actors, but they're not, because a lot of Asian Americans who want to pursue acting give up because there's not enough roles, you know. It's like, or the roles are really, you know, demeaning and kind of racist. So, you know, that's hard to find. And, you know, I had a lot of you know, people give me advice where it's like, oh, well, maybe you should cast a Japanese person or a Chinese, you know, actor, and, you know, they can just speak with an accent. And I was like, that's the worst idea I ever heard, because I really wanted it to feel authentic, and part of that authenticity is the language. You know, I wanted to be able to, you know, show the film here in Korea and have people not be like, ooh, like that person's definitely like not Korean, like that would be such a shame. And then the other issue was, you know, the subject matter that we were dealing with, queer issues. You know, I think it made people, it made some people uncomfortable. You know, like some of the actors. I had a young actor who auditioned for the role of David that I really liked, but you know, he told me that his mom, you know, really didn't approve of the content of the film, and that if he took the part, he would. She told him that he would have to go to Korea to go into hiding, you know, because the Korean American community in LA would be so upset about it, you know. So it's these challenges. You know, ultimately, I felt like we found the best actors for this part, and I'm so happy with the performances. But it was very scrappy, you know, like Mrs. Beck, the pushy church woman, and the spa manager. You know, they're non-actors. You know, they acted a long time ago, but they've had families and, you know, run businesses. And, you know, they're just friends of my parents that we were able to kind of rope in. And they were very happy to do it. They were very excited to kind of be in a movie and to be acting again. So it was really cool. But yeah, we had to be very resourceful.
And from what I heard, the mother and the father, both the actors who are in these roles, they're actually living here in Korea.
Yes, yeah.
How did you get into contact with them?
Through various different ways. So the mother, Hedy Kim, who I think is amazing, she acted in a film called West 32nd Street, which is a Korean American film, and she did it when she was living in New York. And I just went through IMDb and went through the cast list for that. And I saw that name, and I saw the headshot, and I was like, you know, she might be around the right age for this. And we just reached out, you know, we tried to find her. My casting director was really helpful there. And then Yeonho Cho, who plays Jin, the father, he had acted in a short film that my producer and cinematographer had directed a few years ago. And I saw that short film and I thought he was really amazing in it. And I thought he really captured this kind of gravitas, this kind of seriousness. So we reached out, and he wasn't doing a play at the time, and so we were really excited to bring him over.
And there weren't any problems with the communication because, like, here Kim, she speaks English, right?
So Hedy speaks English fluently, so it's very easy to work with her. And then Yeonju Cho, his English is really limited, and my Korean is not good enough to direct an actor in Korean. So, thankfully, he's a very patient man, and he's very generous. And also, his acting style and the characters' kind of characteristic, they're very physical beings. It's a very physical performance. So sometimes it was just about kind of miming an action as opposed to like giving a directing note. But it was also, I had plenty of people on set who could help me translate. So Hedy, Josa, who plays David, he speaks Korean as well. My cinematographer and producer, Kijin, so it was really, it was a very good family environment.
Oh, that sounds really, really good. So you started, the project started at Sundance?
Yeah, so we went through the Sundance Screenwriters Lab in June 2013, and I'd been writing the script for about a year at that point. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So it's been a few years, but in many ways it feels like a long time, but it also feels kind of quick because we were going kind of step by step. I never felt like we had completely stalled and were, never going to make the movie. It was just kind of, the steps took longer, but there were steps, so it felt like I was achieving something.
And there was also screening at Sundance?
Yeah, so we screened at Sundance just this past January 2016, and it was really cool. I mean, I mentioned to the Jeonju audience that, at Sundance we were in U.S. dramatic competition, and it's just so awesome that a U.S. festival would recognize a film that doesn't have, like white actors, and the dialogue is like mostly non-English, that they would recognize that as an American movie. I think that's really awesome. And the audiences were really receptive, and people came up to me, and I was really moved by how many people, were telling me about how they connected to the characters, even if they weren't queer or they weren't Korean American, that they could still find something that they could relate to.
Because it's something that applies to everybody. The moment that we need to kind of grow up and follow our own way, we have to kind of face our parents and tell them, well, I don't want to be a doctor as you wanted me.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think it's a very universal story. It's this kind of story about, like finding yourself. And obviously this is within a very specific context, but I think that's the cool thing about film is like, we're human beings and we can sympathize with each other.
How did you find your own way? How did you find your way towards cinema?
It was very, it was kind of a surprise for me. So when I went to college, I studied biology because I was going to be a doctor. I was going to be a good Korean boy and become a doctor. And when I was in college, I realized that, even though I was doing well in my biology classes, it just wasn't something I was passionate about, and I didn't want to be a dispassionate doctor. It's like, you're dealing with people's lives. And I started taking film classes. I didn't major in it because, it was too much work, but it was enough to kind of get a taste. And so after I graduated college, I decided, I should go to film school because it was the thing that I was most curious about. It kind of sustained my attention. because I was still kind of trying to figure out like, well, what kind of films do I want to make and how do you make them? So I went to CalArts for grad school, and it was there that I slowly started to kind of marry, my own personal development, coming out as a gay man, with my creative development, and it just made work that I felt really strongly about, and also was fulfilling for me. Like I enjoyed doing that work, and so that level of satisfaction has really carried me through, all the way up until today, and will continue to.
And this is your first feature?
This is my first feature. So I made 2 short films, and then Spa Night is my first feature.
And how did your parents react?
Yeah, I mean, my parents, I came out to my parents in 2011, and this is kind of the dirty little secret about my last short film, was that I had cast my family in the film without telling them what the movie was about, and it's about a gay Korean American man, and then I showed them the film to come out to them, and so I think they've always, seen my filmmaking tied to my sexuality, and so, I think they're really happy that I've found a lot of success with my filmmaking so far, and they're very personally very accepting of who I am, and my sexuality. It still makes them a little bit uncomfortable, especially when you're talking about like Korean American or Korean audiences. They get a little bit scared, but I think they have a confidence in me that I'm able to kind of deal with any sort of, resistance or criticism that I get. But yeah, my mom, she was like, for your next movie, you could make an action film, or you can make a comedy. So I think they're kind of itching for me to try something different. But I don't think that they're gonna. They've been super supportive.
So it's a kind of a happy ending.
In a lot of ways, yeah. I mean, like for me, my personal life, I do feel like I'm in a very good place, emotionally, in terms of my sexuality. I have loving parents, and, I think that I've come a long way. And I think it's because I'm healthy with it that I'm able to make these movies where I go back to these kind of darker, harder, more complicated moments. And so, I really do hope that when audiences see Spa Night, that yes, this character and this family, they're going through a hard time, but that there's always going to be this kind of sense of hopefulness and a looking forward to the future, that the audiences walk away with.
And since you came to Jeonju, did you have a chance to talk to Korean filmmakers?
Oh gosh, who have I talked to so far? I very briefly said hello to a few in kind of bad Korean, but I've been watching, a few films. I saw. It's a feature in Korean competition. It's the lesbian film.
Okay.
A
love story. Our love story.
Our love story, which I really enjoyed, and I wanted to see it because it's a queer story, and I also saw that the documentary Mursum, about the Jeonju Island divers, which I really loved. And then I saw a shorts program, the Korean competition shorts program, number 4. It has a friend of mine. His film is in it. Kangmin Kim. He has a short film called Sasumkot. And so it was a all Korean movie, all day kind of thing for me yesterday. So it was cool. I really enjoyed watching the movies.
So would you like to work with a bigger Korean crew, or maybe shoot here in Korea?
I would love to. I do think that what makes films really fascinating is kind of a level of specificity and insight into, a situation or a location or a context. I think if I ever made a film here in Korea, it would still kind of be from an outsider's perspective because I'm not a local, I think I would feel like a fraud if I tried to make a movie that made me feel like a local. And so, I would love to. I think it's still going to be told kind of from a foreigner's perspective, but I think that could be interesting. Especially because I'm a foreigner in ways and I'm not in other ways. And so it's that kind of gray area complexity that, could be really interesting. So I would love to. I just need to figure out, what's the story and when can I make it and how do I find money for it?
Oh, I wish you good luck.
Thank you.
And thank you for this wonderful interview.
Yeah, of course. I had a lot of fun.
This year, the 17th Jeonju International Film Festival had a special focus on documentary films, and the festival's organizing committee created a special award for the best documentary screened. One of the films that competed for the award, and also an entry from the Korean competition section, was Mrs. B, a North Korean woman. Mrs. B, or Madame B as she is known in France, lives in China after fleeing North Korea with the help of illegal traffickers. And while living with her new husband, a Chinese farmer, Mrs. B has herself become a drug and human trafficker in order to earn money for her North Korean family. Yana Lekarska spoke with the Busan-born but French-educated director Jeonju about the 4 years he spent working on the film, which is itself a co-production between France and South Korea.
So the name of the movie that we saw in Jeonju, Madame B, a North Korean woman, can you tell us who is she?
Mrs. B is a woman. Madame B is a woman who I met in China 3 years ago. And during this time, I went to China for my personal research about my works, about the Korean situation. North and South, and also the people, especially about the people, North Korean refugees. About them, I'm working for more than 5 years now, so I met many people. But Mrs. B, she was a very special case because she was a smuggler. And she smuggled the people, those Korean refugees, but also the women and also drugs. But it was for her family, for her. In fact, she did everything for save her family, her two sons. And I met her in China 3 years ago, and because she introduced me those Korean refugees for take an interview. But time by time, she became protagonist in this movie, and I decided to make a film about her. And now it's already 3 years.
And you said that she has also 2 families.
Yes.
How is this possible?
How it's possible? It's possible. That's why I was more interesting about her case, because many those Korean women, especially women, when women sold in Chinese family after they escape North Korea, it's very usual cases for every North Korean refugees, especially for women, not for men. It's different. But whatever, every woman escape North Korea, they spend some times in Chinese family for survive. and then they go out for different reasons. But her case, it was very different because she stayed for 9 years with the Chinese family. It was very special because in other cases, all the time is 1 year after or just 6 months later or 2 months later, they just go out, go away somewhere and come to South Korea.
So she had basically a family that was still in North Korea that she was supporting, and in the same time she had a kind of Chinese husband.
Yes, because she was sold to Chinese family by another smuggler. Because when she was sold, she wasn't smuggler. She was just like everyone.
Like a refugee.
Yes. And then she met her Chinese husband for the first time. But she, in this film anyway, it's talk about that. She just wanted to stay 1 year for earn the money and then go back to North Korea to take care of her North Korean family. But she changed after 1 year. So time by time, she finally decided to stay with Chinese family because her Chinese husband, he was very kind. He said, well, you're a gentleman. I know him, and very gentleman. So, but she wanted to save her North Korean family one day. So she became smuggler to earn money because she need money if she want to save her Chinese North Korean family from North Korea. Because she need money, she became smuggler, and some years after, she organized everything
for them to come to South Korea.
Yes. So when she finished this mission for her, one day it was so the film it's begin by this story because I met her at this moment.
Yes.
So she wanted to go to South Korea for new life in Seoul, but she didn't want to live with her North Korean family. So she wanted to live with her Chinese husband because finally I think it's not love, but it's something different. It's between love and maybe something I can't explain.
But it's close to love, to friendship, real friendship, and like partnership in a marriage.
Yes. So finally, she decided to bring her Chinese husband until South Korea for getting an apartment and live around of her 2 sons and her North Korean family, but not with them, but with her Chinese husband. It was her dream when I met her. It was 3 years ago.
And you have footage in which you are following her on her way from China to South Korea, which was a really long way, not just straight taking the plane from China straight to South Korea. How did you get this footage on a bus going through the whole of China?
So, as I said last time in Jeonju Film Festival, about Mrs. B, Madame B, it wasn't. I just want to do, it was just researching time for me. So I didn't realize it was very important moment to shoot or whatever for make a movie. But when she told me she will leave to South Korea from China, I realized that she really is going. So, and then I just asked her so I can go with her. And she said, yes, you can go, you can come with me. But I'm South Korean, so I can, maybe it can be different for me, not for you. You know what happened, but I don't know what happened.
It might be dangerous.
Yes. But she said, don't worry, I will be with you and I can protect you if you want to go with me. So, but at this moment I didn't have a good camera, whatever. So I have just the iPhone and just small camera. So every footage that you saw, it's from iPhone and small camera.
I cannot believe it. It was so good.
So it's just improvising, because I didn't really prepare whatever for. I didn't know it can be a movie after. It was 3 years ago.
Were you scared at some point during this trip on the bus with all those other North Korean refugees? Were you scared?
Sometimes, yes, some moment, of course, because it's during some days we couldn't eat and we must walk, or we must change the car. We changed many cars because each area you will meet different smuggler. So you must, whatever normally you pay for that. So I paid I paid my my trip until Thailand. So anyway, and so Madame B organized everything for my trip. So I was like a North Korean refugee, but with the North Korean group, Madame B introduced me to them. I am South Korean, but I didn't want to lie to them. So I really wanted to start as South Korean, and I say yes, I have camera, whatever. Yes, I am. I will go with you. And first time they didn't trust me, but because it was Mrs. Madame B introduced everything. I am filmmaker and whatever, and then I spent many time with them, and time by time they trust me and they help me sometimes.
I wish you good luck for Cannes, and hopefully to hear some good news after you come back from Cannes.
Thank you.
You can find more reports from Yana Lekarska on the time she spent at the Jeonju International Film Festival at hangukyeonghwa.com. For KoreaFM.net, I'm Chance Dorland.